Good afternoon. Everybody, Pasty and Pete here. Leave it to Paul Johnson to mess up my afternoon. Now, first of all, he didn't mess it up. I mean, I'm ecstatic that Paul Johnson's gone. I know that everyone says, "Oh, Paul Johnson's gone." You know, you should be disappointed because you can't beat up on Georgia Tech every year. For anybody who doesn't know, Clemson plays Georgia Tech every year in our cross-divisional rivalry, if that's what you want to call it. But it's no secret how I feel about Paul Johnson in that middle school offense he's been running over there. How long has he been there? 11 years. Most overpaid coach in the history of all of college football. But yeah, so I posted the Ohio State and the Oklahoma Who's In video a little while ago, and I moved about my day, doing things that were actually important. And then I was on Twitter and saw that Paul Johnson retired. And the interesting thing about this, first of all, good job, Georgia Tech. So, I trashed Georgia Tech. I trashed their fans, which is easy to do. I mean, because these guys are jokes. I mean, the most interesting part about this, as far as, the fans go, is going to be the fans coming out of the woodwork. You watch. You mark my words. The fans are going to come out of the woodwork talking about, oh, we're glad Paul Johnson's gone. Now we can move on. When for the past 11 years, especially on my YouTube channel here, I can only speak to that as far as evidence about this. These guys have been doing nothing but sticking up for this joker. These guys have been doing nothing but saying, oh, well, the triple option's hard to defend. Well, our academic standards are so high, we can't recruit the same players that Clemson and Alabama do. But now, you mark my words, now they're going to come out of the woodwork. Now it's going to be, oh, we're so glad Paul Johnson's gone. We can't wait to get a real offense in here. I mean, this just goes to show you how little the fans of Georgia Tech football know about football. And, I mean, can you blame them? I mean, even if I went to Georgia Tech, I'm not sure I'd go to those games. I mean, they're embarrassing. Embarrassing. Now, no matter who gets in there with this job, they got an uphill battle to climb because Paul Johnson has royally screwed that roster up to a massive, massive point. And if you're a Georgia Tech football player, I'm not disparaging you. Not your fault. But unless they go hire another triple option guy, which, by the way, the coach of Army is on that list, which shows me right off the bat that the athletic director there has not learned his lesson. I wouldn't put a triple option coach on the list if I were the athletic director, or if I was a booster or an alumni. I mean, if I were a Georgia Tech alum or student or even just fan, even if I didn't go there, I'd be marching in the streets of Atlanta right now with posters that, like one of those Trump rallies with posters. Do not get a triple option coach. I mean, there would be riots in the streets. If I cared about Georgia Tech football, there's no way in hell that I would even be entertaining a triple option football coach to come in there. Now, what this means is if you do get a triple option football coach to come in there, then you have a turnkey situation because you've been recruiting triple option players for the past 11 years. Makes sense. But you won't be relevant. Listen, for all of Paul Johnson's downfalls, he was a great triple option coach. I mean, the problem is it doesn't translate to Power 5. It doesn't translate to any type of football we've had since color TVs came out. Certainly not since the internet was invented. And they're so far behind the times, it's ridiculous. But you're going to have to go through those growing pains. You're just going to have to do it. If you want to be relevant in the next 10 years, you've got to commit to a coach who knows how to coach offense. Hell, you don't even have to do offense. You can get a defensive coach in there if you want. But somebody who's going to get an offensive coordinator in there who's got some sort of vision for an offense. You're just going to have to go through the recruiting cycle situation. Let 3 or 4 years go by where you have a terrible team, but you've been terrible for anyways. So you're not really losing anything. You're just preparing for the future at this point. But some of the names that have come up have been very interesting. Cam Wisenhunt, offensive coordinator for the Rams. Now, you want to talk about a complete 360, 180, whatever. 360 is all the way around, right? That'll be back to the Paul Johnson guy. A 180. the coach of the Rams, offensive coach of the Rams, which is basically an Oklahoma Big 12 style offense they run out there in the NFL. I mean, you can't get more different than a triple option as far as what the Rams are doing right now. I think that would be a great hire. He also is an alum of Georgia Tech. He played there. He's from Georgia. So I think that will be a massive, massive hire. He's got relationships. He's a very well-known guy, very well-respected guy. That might be the best-case scenario that Georgia Tech could ever hope for if he wants the job. I mean, because right now he's leading the offense of a team that's competing for a Super Bowl spot, probably, or at least definitely at the top of the NFC. But that's a whole other conversation. Another guy that everyone's talking about, Tony Elliott, the co-offensive coordinator for Clemson. Tony Elliott's been there a long time. He's had a lot of success. Hell, he's got a national championship ring with Deshaun Watson. You see what Clemson's offense is doing right now. People say, Pete, you don't want that. You don't want to see Tony Elliott leave Clemson. And you know what? Maybe I don't. But here's the thing. I just told you, he's not the offensive coordinator at Clemson. He's the co-offensive coordinator at Clemson. And Dabo Swinney, you can love him or hate him. You can say he's an aw shucks guy. He's a two-faced backstabber, which is a complete nonsense. All you want. Complete nonsense. That's just haters. I mean, these people that bash Dabo Swinney would give their left arm for him to be the coach of their team, unless you're an Alabama fan. And even they want him as soon as Saban leaves. So everybody does. But he's the co-offensive coordinator. Elliott could leave, and the offense wouldn't skip a beat. We've got another guy there that's been there for a long time. People said that Clemson's offense was going to fall apart when Trav Morris left. Didn't skip a beat. Because Dabo Swinney, this is what being a CEO of a team, this is what being a head coach is all about. You just look at Nick Saban losing coordinators year after year after year after year, and their defense and offense don't skip a beat because he's got things in place for that to happen. And that's what Dabo Swinney's got. So Tony Elliott, that will be a great job. I mean, to go from offensive coordinator to Clemson to a head coach in a Power 5 league and a hot recruiting bed like Atlanta, Georgia, I mean, that's a great situation. I make all the jokes I want to about Georgia Tech's football program. A lot of that has to do with this joker right here, Paul Johnson. But the reality of the situation is that Georgia Tech does have a history of being great in football. In recent history, in my lifetime. Hell, they got a co-national championship in 1991. They've had some great, great, great players come through there, offensive players too. And if they get the right guy in there and submit to him for the long term, they're in there. Like I said, they're in the recruiting bed where they can compete. They're in a league where they can compete. And this is good. It's good for the ACC. It's good for Georgia Tech and first and foremost. And I like it. I like it. Paul Johnson, I mean, sir, you should have retired 10 years ago. You should have never been hired there with that high school. When I say high school offense, I'm giving you too much credit. That Pop Warner offense that you run over there, that Service Academy offense that you run. But anyway, breaking news. I'm happy. I'm happy, and I don't want to be insensitive to Paul Johnson here. Because the guy lost a job. I mean, he's got to go retire now and spend the millions of dollars he stole from Georgia Tech down in the Cayman Islands, the Caribbean, wherever he chooses to go. I don't know what Paul Johnson likes to do other than ruin football teams, other than ruin the hopes and dreams of every football player that ever came through there under his tenure. I don't know what he likes to do. So before you get on here and start telling me, oh, you should not be disparaging Paul Johnson. He's a real person. Yeah, he's a real person that just stole about $20 million from a university. He's a thief. And an imposter of a football coach. And on top of that, he's an asshole who blames everybody but himself for every loss they've ever had. It's always somebody else's fault, never this joker. Good riddance, Paul Johnson. Go Tigers. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete checking out.